जब भी वेबिनार खत्म होगा तभी तो बताओगे। तो उसमें आज हमें क्या है? अच्छा अच्छा ठीक है।
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session on COVID-19 economic and financial challenges and opportunities by Dr. S.P. Sharma, who's the Chief Economist at PhD Chambers of Commerce and Industry. I'd like to start this session by briefing the audience a bit about IMS Ghaziabad. So, sir, please allow me to share the screen.
Yeah, it is allowed. Please go ahead.
So, as we know, IMS Ghaziabad is a 30-year-old institution and an institution which is the academic excellence last 30 years and having 6,000 plus alumni and highly qualified faculty members. And we also have a strong base of intellectual capital and contribution to academic practices of management, MDPs and trainings. And we have been able to achieve excellent placement records since inception. And we have rich academic and corporate alliances and state of the infrastructure. And we'll be able to see for a brief 5-minute session. If you talk about IMS Ghaziabad's milestone in last 30 years and possibly last decade, the IMS Ghaziabad was established in 1990 and we got our MBA equivalent status by Association of Indian Universities in 2001. We got ISO certification and we accredited the PGD 2000. Then we got NAC accreditation A grade in 2016. And then came along two international accreditations for IMS Ghaziabad. One is from ASIC UK, and another one is the membership of very prestigious AACSB USA in 2019. We have a few programs that we'd like to just brief about. Postgraduate Diploma in Management, that is a general PGDM, which has 7 specializations. And then PGDM in International Business, PGDM in Big Data Analytics, and Master of Computer Application. Then we have recently started this executive PhD program in management in collaboration with Jamia Hamdard University, Delhi. When we talk about IMS Ghaziabad's corporate and international academic alliances, we have MOU with IIM Cozy Code for using CAT as qualifying score. Then we have MOU with MCX, that is India's largest commodity derivative exchange, and MOU with IBM for PGDM Big Data Analytics. We also have an MOU with CSC Academy and BRICS Chambers of Commerce and Industry. We do also have some international affiliations with universities outside, ones like Fredericton University of Canada, MOU with Northern Illinois University, USA, MOU with the Fort Hays University, USA, and then again Jamia Hamdard University for collaboration in the field of research and management. If we talk about the intellectual capital at IMS Ghaziabad, it is led by Professor Alok Pandey, who is also director and member governing council at IMS Ghaziabad, followed by Dr. Tapan Kumar Naik. He's a professor and dean academics. And then Professor Anita Singh and Dr. Pankaj Agarwal. So the list follows, and we have more than 50 faculty members, the permanent faculty members at IMS Ghaziabad. Teaching pedagogy is IMS Ghaziabad the way to evaluate and analyze, unlike the old institutional pedagogy that focuses on remember, understand, and apply. So it is called Bloom's taxonomy, and it follows as how students can know things out of what they are learning. Now, if we talk about the teaching pedagogy, then it is based on the outcome-based teaching pedagogy, which is a mix of digital evaluation with continuous assessment. We have online examination, midterms always been done online. This year, we've been able to achieve the best placements in last so many years. Top 50 students bagged placement with average above 9 lakh per annum. We have got 326 plus job offers from 125 companies. Highest international package was 16.6 lakh LPA, and domestic highest package was 12 lakhs. The students of PGDM's 1820 batch have got 100% base in diverse sectors. If you talk about consulting, financial services, research, FMCG, and logistics and all. And best of the best companies have visited IMS Ghaziabad and gave opportunities to IMSians. Amidst all the COVID-19 situation, IMS Ghaziabad has completed all the remaining syllabus of batch 2018 and 1921 through online classes by using online platforms such as Zoom, WebEx, Google Meet, and institutional official ERP. The institute has also completed all the internal evaluations through institute's official ERP without any hassle. All the midterm and end-term examination have always been completed through online ERP. And all the question papers have been moderated by the examination moderation committee headed by the director sir through online platforms. And we plan to announce the results soon. If you talk about the library at IMS Ghaziabad, the intellectual capital depends on such resources. So we have one of the best library in entire Delhi NCR with more than 44,000 physical books available in the campus. Apart from, we have e-books from Tata McGraw-Hill and World Library that counts more than 8 lakhs in total. And then journal, other resources, if you see, all the resources is available at IMS Ghaziabad. These are a few to name this. Then again to claim it's all covered. These are the sector placement details for IMS Ghaziabad for the year 2019. All the sectors you can see.
Yeah, this you have already said. You can pass on.
Then we have our distinguished alumnus, Mr. Rajiv Agnihotri, who is the General Manager, Pawan Hans Limited, and batch of 1992. Mr. Puneet Malhotra, Senior Vice President with HSBC, batch of 1994. And Director Attachment with Deloitte, batch of 1995. These were awarded the Distinguished Alumnus Award during Convocation of 2019 last year. State of the infrastructure, lush green campus, or fully automated library, 7 computer labs, state of the art. And we've covered all the libraries, specialized language labs and AC classrooms, corporate resource center, electronic library, elevators for specially able students, and medical facilities round the clock in the hostel and campus. Then common rooms and canteen and mess and everything that you can think of is available at IMS Ghaziabad.
Wait, ma'am, I'm coming.
Then there are several international conferences that were held last year, maybe any field, maybe marketing or finance or HR. And in perspective, finance or changing economy scenario in the month of February. So this was all about IMS Ghaziabad. Now I'd like to invite the torchbearer of IMS Ghaziabad and mentor at IMS Ghaziabad, Professor Alok Pandey, Director Sir, to kindly address this session.
Just stop the sharing. Yeah. Stop sharing the PPT, please. Yeah.
Yes.
Honorable Dr. S.P. Sharma, Chief Economist, PhD, Chamber of Commerce and Industry, a veteran on economic issues and an expert often seen on all possible media channels, etc., media sources. It's a pleasure being with Dr. Sharma this morning. My colleagues here, Dr. Tapan Nayak, Dean Academics, other senior colleagues, students. It's a wonderful day today when we are going to hear Dr. Sharma on a very relevant topic, where he is going to speak on economic and financial challenges and opportunities. This last 3 months have been probably difficult, but a very rare kind of a phenomenon. They call it black swan events. When you look at these events, probably they happen once 100 years. 100 years ago, we had Spanish flu, which they say killed close to 7 crore people in the world, out of which 2 crore people got killed in India. Day before yesterday, UGC has constituted a special, they've sent a letter to all the colleges and institutions to start doing research on 1918 Spanish flu as to how people managed Spanish flu in absence of any proper government support. Because those days, what actually happened that Spanish flu spread through soldiers who actually had gone to fight the World War and they were serving in other places. It first came in June 1918. 500, 700 people died and then it vanished. It came back with a vengeance in around November 1918, and by December 1920, it had killed close to 2 crore people in this country. But there was resilience. There was Indian economy, though not supported very well by the British because they had their own intentions. The economy, of course, slowly rebuilt itself. The agrarian crisis did not loom as large. So it is interesting to note that after 100 years after that event, we have another event where we have now 300,000 people affected in 3 months' time. The death rate is very low. The mortality rate in India in general is around 2.5%. Around 8,000 people have died till date, with around 3 lakh plus affected. The impact has not been as huge on the rural area as much as on urban areas. And the impact on urban areas is not due to disease. It is because of lockdown, which has been implemented by the government, and you see mass scale migration of people from A place to B place. You see suicides of people who are in unorganized sector, who are unable to earn any money. They are not supported by pensions. They are not supported by any social security. In any case, barely 40% of people in this country have a health insurance, and less than 10% have any pension plan with them. Largely, the economy is very poor, with per capita GDP 1/5 of that of China, and a huge population of close to 140 crore people, out of which barely 30 to 40 crore can be called middle or lower middle class or upper classes. Remaining 70 to 80 crore people, you have no idea as to how they make their ends meet. Another problem is that with COVID coming in, it is evident that all kinds of disparities, especially economic disparities, the digital divide, they'll be magnified, and they have been magnified in India. So what has happened, these remaining 90, 60, 70, 80, 90 crore people, they form the backbone. They are the workers, they are the laborers, they are the people who run our systems, they run our supply chains, they run our warehouses, they run our cold storages. They are the ones who work in paddy fields. I had recently gone to my father, who was on dialysis, and who's on dialysis for the last 1.5 years. On my way back, I found truckloads of laborers coming back, and there were Innovas filled with 15 people with 2 Sikh gentlemen sitting in front. So I asked one of the drivers, so where are you going? They said, sir, we had come back from Punjab. We are going back to Punjab because paddy season has started in Punjab and there are no labor left. So let me tell you, Punjab does not have enough laborers. So Haryana doesn't have it. Ghaziabad, Noida, industrial belt of UP does not have it. So, you know, the impact of this COVID-19 has been effectively not being studied on those 80, 90 crore people. Another thing I'll tell you, 1% of the population now controls broadly 70 to 75% of the GDP. And this is the result of the 1991 liberalization, which focused on services sector. And services sector basically caters to highly educated people. And I've been almost always, I have now come to a conclusion that merely enforcing service sector ideas without educating everybody ensures that a large majority of the people would not get any benefit of your reforms. And that has happened. It has all gone to people who are into IT, ITES industry, financial services industry, education sector. Everything has boomed. But what has not happened, what has not boomed is the manufacturing or agricultural sector, where people still are in very difficult state of affairs. So I simply feel that we need to have more debate on it. I have spoken to someone at PhD CCI. We are a member of PhD CCI. And I had told them that, you know, we would definitely want to participate more. We are not a company yet as an educational institution, because we are a member and we pay a fee. We definitely should be part of more events at PhD CCI, where we are able to build up some kind of a consensus, where whatever we do, it percolates down to the last person standing in the queue, which now finally the government has started talking. The Atmanirbhar Bharat, the government has come in with a scheme where a large liquidity injection has been given. You know, around 2% of that 10% of GDP is fiscal support, and 8% is liquidity injection, and largely going to go through small and medium enterprises, agriculture sector, and other sectors. So what is now important is that post-COVID, we hope that we'll come together with PhD CCI, probably we'll meet and we'll work out. Some of our faculty colleagues should start working with some projects on PhD CCI with Dr. Sharma's support. And we also should now contribute as to what should we do in Ghaziabad. I can tell you, Sharma Saab, on 22nd of April, my office had become a control room where the additional DG Law and Order, IG Police, the place where I'm sitting right now, DIG, IG, DM and SSP of both Ghaziabad and Noida were sitting here. Why? Because 2 lakh people had gathered around outside the institute, because this is called a Lal Kuan bus stand of Ghaziabad. They came to know that there are buses which are being now, which has been a bus service started by the government of UP, which will take them back to their hometowns. And 2 lakh people gathered here, and that became almost a law and order situation. We also supported that. But you know, this is a pain which people don't understand. I feel that with your lecture, once we finish, we'll be able to understand a little more about it. You are an expert on this, and our students also would learn a little more. Our faculty colleagues would also learn a little more. We are doing a lot of research-oriented programs. In fact, a 5-day program on research has started. Financial research using eViews. Yesterday, it will run 5 days. 100 people are participating, from people from Oman, Bhutan, and other countries also are there. Saudi Arabia are also there in that program. And we are now trying to create a research culture where our faculty members and students work towards socially meaningful research projects and try to solve problems rather than just focus on getting themselves published. So with these words, I welcome you once again, and I hope that my colleagues would not just enjoy your lecture, but try gaining an insight into this. I don't see it as a crisis. I see it as an opportunity where we would find something new, and probably our way of life would change. So I hope, I look forward to listen to you. Please don't mind if my video goes off, because यहाँ लोग आते रहते हैं, कुछ काम चलता रहता है, ऑफिस में बैठा हूँ मैं. So, but yes, I am looking forward to your lecture, sir. So, thank you very much, and over to you, Sai.
Thank you, sir, for your positive word as always. I'd now like to welcome our Dean Academics, Dr. Tapan Kumar Naik, sir, to introduce and welcome our esteemed guest for the day. So, over to you.
Thank you, Sai. Thank you, Director sir, for such sensitive and motivating address, inaugural address. So it is my pleasure and honor to introduce Dr. S.P. Sarma to our August gathering. Dr. S.P. Sarma has around 24 years of diverse experience in the various areas of economy, trade, and industry. He is working with the PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry as a chief economist. He has conducted more than 100 research studies, papers, projects, etc. with prestigious organizations such as Government of India, state governments, UNCTAD, European Commission, industry chambers and associations, and corporates. He has participated in more than 100 programs as an esteemed panelist, chair, moderator, organized by various reputed government as well as industry organizations, trade associations, educational institutes, research organizations, among others. Recently, Sir has addressed International Research Conference on India-UK Economic and Regulatory Perspective, organized by University of Portsmouth, UK, seminar on global value chain at University of Leeds, UK, and International Conference on Global Value Chains and Industry at 75 at IIM Trichy. He appears in various prestigious panel discussions, roundtable conducted by various TV channels such as Lok Sabha TV, Rajya Sabha TV, Doordarshan, and various private channels. He is a regular participant in the prestigious program Market Mantra of All India Radio. He is member of RBI Industry Monitoring Group, Editorial Board of Journal Press of India, Advisory Group of Birla Institute of Management and Technology, Surya Foundation, Gitaratan Institute of Management, and Joypuri Institute of Management, among others. So with this, it's my pleasure once again to invite Dr. S.P. Sarma sir to listen you, and I invite you to take the session forward, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. At the outset, I am thankful to IMS Ghaziabad for inviting me to share my viewpoint on various aspects of economy, businesses, trade, industry, how the pandemic COVID-19 is impacting the industry, trade, and how the strategies of the businesses are going to mitigate the daunting impact of COVID-19. And government perspective, government support to trade and industry, various relief measures provided by the government, and the suggestive measures from the industry side. So this is a great equilibrium, I would say, between government and industry. Industry was in view of that there must be some financial package for the support of the industry, for the support of the trade. And government in line announced 20 lakh crore financial package, which is in line of the expectations of the trade and industry. And with this equilibrium between the government and industry perspective, industry demand, I believe there is a great equilibrium between the demand and supply also, because there were a lot of supply disruptions during the start of COVID-19 because of the lockdown period. But on the same side, on the demand side, there were a lot of suppression of demand and the compression of demand. Uh, that was a great equilibrium, because if the supply disruptions were there and demand was not compressing, then there must be a great rise in prices. So this equilibrium was by nature that supply was also disrupted and demand was equally compressed by the people. So I am going to share my thoughts, my connotations, my viewpoint on various aspects of trade and economy. So firstly, I would start from India, how India is moving in its trajectory from a closed economy to a vibrant economy. So I am going to share my PPT. Dear students, respected professors, faculty members, Shri Alok ji, Shri Tapan ji, among others, I am very thankful to you and for inviting me once again. So this is the widening economic landscape of the growth trajectory of India. We were very, very closed during the earlier years, like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, our markets were not that much open. There were a lot of bureaucratic hurdles. And today, now we are in a very, very liberalized economy. The LPG model of the Rao Manmohan Singh of 1991 opened the floodgates, and liberalization, privatization, and globalization has now become the nature of the Indian economy. Here I would like to mention that before 1991, it took around 40 years to double India's per capita income. It took around 40 years. But after 1991, after the reforms of the 1991, now per capita income doubles every 17 years in the real terms, and in the nominal terms, in the current prices, every 10 years. So that is the visible impact of the reforms undertaken by Rao Manmohan model of 1991, which opened the floodgates for the FDIs, for the innovation, for technology transfers. So this is the trajectory of the reforms, that now we are able to connect more with people, connect more with the economies, connect more with the countries across the world. And tomorrow we will be the fastest moving economy in the world economic system. Our participation will also increase. Now we are at around 3.2% of global GDP. And I would like to mention that we were only 1.7% at the time of Lehman crisis. After the Lehman crisis, during the last 10 years or 11 years, we are able to double our participation, almost double our participation in the world GDP on the back of various reforms undertaken by the government, undertaken by the respective governments, not only the recent government, but starting from 1991, we are in a trajectory of the economic reforms. So this is the landscape of the India's economic growth trajectory, from the closed economy of yesterday's and opened economy of today and fastest moving economy of tomorrow. That is the nature of the Indian economy, how Indian economy works. India moves from slow to steady. There is some spelling mistake. Slow to steady, fast to fastest. We were slow during the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, and we were steady in 80s and 90s, and we were fast in 2000s and fastest in 2010. So we moved from slow to steady and then fast to fastest. And consumption-driven economy. We are a consumption-driven economy with a supply deficit. What is nature of Indian economy? If I am compressing the whole scenario in a single sentence, then India is a consumption-driven supply deficit economy. We consume more, produce less. Unlike China, China produces more, consumes less, and the surplus is exported with the supply efficiencies. But in India, we consume more, produce less, and we import from the other economies. That we will discuss in the coming slides, that how to mitigate the impact of imports also, and how to reduce the imports, and how to become self-reliant. Global integratedness increases each day. We are integrating with the global economy. Now we are more than 100% of our GDP in terms of our global integratedness, in terms of, if we calculate, if we club all the current receipts and current payments, capital receipts and capital payments, then it becomes more than 100% of GDP. That is huge. And this was only 20 to 25% in the time of 1991 reforms, and at around 40% in 2000s. Now more than 100% are our current receipts and current payments, current capital receipts and capital payments. So the trajectory of integratedness with the world economy is increasing each day. Target, what is our target? Target is to become a $5 trillion economy by 24-25. So now how to reach this 24-25? What should be the route for this for this 5 trillion economy by 24-25? We have to refuel. We have to provide adequate reform process, adequate fueling to the economy to move on this high road of $5 trillion. So assessing the current economic situation now, if we want to become the $5 trillion economy, then what is the current situation? How to become more and more vibrant? How to become more and more efficient? Firstly, we have to check the numbers. GDP is 4.2%. Current rate of GDP is 4.2%, and we were at 7.1% in FY18, then 6.1% in 19, and 4.2% in 20. So this is the structural slowdown, actually, starting from 2018, because whole world was facing slowdown. If we consider the global GDP was also at around 5%, or somewhere more or less 5%, and that also decelerated to 3.8, then 3.2, then 2.7 in the last 3 years. So in the same line, because of the global headwinds, because of trade war between China and US and other geopolitical tensions, the economy was not able to connect more with the global integratedness. We were not able to export much. So that's why the economy was in a slow mode trajectory during the last 3-4 years. And one thing happened very, very significant and very, very promising, that we attracted a lot of FDI from the foreign countries. Flow of FDI increased from $61 billion to $73 billion in 2020. And at the time of Make in India, the foreign trade investment was only at around $37 billion. So we were able to attract more and more FDI from the foreign markets during the last 3 years. Then fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit is also more or less in the comfortable trajectory during the last 2 years from 18 to 19. But in the last year, fiscal deficit increased because of the problematic months of February and March, because there was a slowdown in the economy, and last quarter numbers were not that much good, and not in favor of the economy. So that's why the fiscal deficit increased significantly during the later months. And inflation is also at around 6%, which is not in the comfortable trajectory in the CPI segment. But in the WPI, inflation is in minus trajectory for the month of May. And CPI numbers are not available because of the problematic months of COVID-19, March and April. So CPI, exactly the CPI numbers are not available. IIP numbers are in the negative trajectory. IIP is minus 55%. IIP is a benchmark which is reflecting the manufacturing process and the activity of the industry in a month. So that is not in favor. That has decelerated significantly to the level of minus 55%. And the core infrastructure also decelerated, minus 38%. So overall, macroeconomic picture during the last 2-3 months is severely impacted, and all the economic parameters or all the fundamentals of the economic growth are impacted by the COVID-19, daunting impact of COVID-19. And if we consider the numbers as mentioned by Professor Alok Pandey, that our death rate is very, very low as compared with many countries. So that is a good thing, that we are resilient as compared with many advanced and emerging economies, because advanced economies are also facing a significant increase in the number of deaths. And within India, Maharashtra is impacted significantly, followed by Tamil Nadu, then Delhi, Gujarat, and Uttar Pradesh. These are the most affected 5 states within the country. So going forward, as mentioned by Alok Pandey, that 1980s swine flu, Spanish flu, needs to be looked in, because that will provide a lot of insights how to tackle this pandemic COVID-19 and how to mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on the various segments of trade and industry and people. So at this backdrop, our Honorable Prime Minister announced Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, that with the 5 pillars, of which economy, of course, is a major ingredient. Economy has to support the Atmanirbharta. So Atmanirbharta ke liye vishwas banega, that will come from the Arthashastra. Then infrastructure. We have to become a very, very adequate and with the state-of-the-art infrastructure, because without infrastructure, we can't compete with the other economies. So we have to improve our infrastructure. And in line with the state-of-the-art infrastructure, government has provided 103 lakh crore package for the infrastructure in the next 5 years, which is called the National Infrastructure Pipeline. So I believe this will provide a great boost to the Indian economy, because infrastructure multiplier in the developing economies like India is very, very high. And definitely, if all the allocations, all the funds available for the infrastructure sector are spent, then definitely we are going to become a $5 trillion economy sooner than later. Technology-driven system is also an ingredient of the Atmanirbhar Bharat. So technology, we have to develop our technologies. We should not be relied more and more on imports, because imports are impacting our deficit, trade deficit, and the current account deficit. So we have to mitigate the import content to become Atmanirbhar. And to reduce the imports, we have to induce technologies. So technologies should also become a great ingredient of the Atmanirbhar Bharat. Then vibrant demography. Vibrant demography, we have vibrant uh, uh, people across the country. Our states are very progressive. Our people are farmers, our students. Uh, these are the pillars of the economic growth. I think the next growth will come from the young population, from students. My dear students, you have to now push the economic growth trajectory of the country. You are the great pillars of the Indian economy going forward. And demand, of course, India is a demand-driven economy, consumption-driven economy. So demand is our major ingredient, and demand is also one of the 5 pillars which will become great support of the economy going forward to become and to push the growth trajectory to the level of $5 trillion by 24-25. So on the back of Atmanirbhar Bharat, government announced the 20 lakh crore stimulus package on May 14, and this was in the 5 tranches. This financial package is 10% of the GDP, and this has given equal importance to land, labor, liquidity, and laws, MSMEs, and there are reforms and announcements for each and every segment of the economy. And this package includes 1.7 lakh crore financial package under different schemes like Ujjwala Yojana, Annadata Yojana, additions in Jan Dhan Yojana, and yojanas for the poor and needy people, workers. Then there are 15,000 crore announcements for the build-up of the health infrastructure. Then announcements for the other 5 tranches by Madam Nirmala Sitharaman, of which first tranche, they announced the reforms for the MSME sector and EPF support, then NBFCs, 30,000 crore for the NBFCs, then 3 lakh crore for the MSMEs, 20,000 crore subordinate debt for the stressed MSMEs, 50,000 crore equity infusion for MSMEs to fund of funds, and then the new definition of MSMEs. Here, I would like to mention and to update my dear students, because these are the pillars of the Indian economy, and next growth will come from the students, from the young workforce. That MSME sector is a major support of the Indian economy. MSME sector contributes at around 32% in GDP, of which around 24% comes from the services sector and 8% from the manufacturing. But this participation of the MSME sector in Indian economy is not that much adequate. We have to increase this participation. We have to increase the share of MSME sector in GDP. In most of the advanced economies, MSMEs contribute at around 70% in their respective GDP. Our contribution is only 32%. And of the total production, 0.39% companies in India contribute 40% of the total production. 0.39%. So less than 1% companies are producing 40% of the product, and the rest 60% is produced by the 99% companies. So this is the this is not in sync with the thought process of the Indian economy for the inclusive growth. So we have to expand the trajectory of MSME sector, and the share of MSME sector should increase the level of, at least, I believe, my connotation is, my belief is that MSME sector should be at around 50% of GDP at the time of India becoming a US dollar 5 trillion economy by 24-25. So this 18 percentage point increase in the share of MSME sector in the next 5 years, I believe, will provide a lot of employment opportunities for the growing young workforce in India. So that is the thought process behind the growth of MSME sector, that we have to make them vibrant, make them efficient. Their efficacy should also increase in the foreign markets. they should also connect with the global supply chains, and they should be able to produce more and export more towards the global markets. Then there was a second tranche of the financial reforms, financial package for the farmers, for the housing sector, and for the migrants. And the government provided 30,000 crore additional emergency working capital fund through NABARD, and 2 lakh crore of concessional credit boost to 2.5 crore farmers. So then in third tranche, government provided again a great stimulus package, 1 lakh crore for strengthening the farm gate infrastructure, then 10,000 crore fund for the micro food enterprises, then fund of 20,000 crore for the logistics, then national animal disease program. There were a lot of reforms for the agriculture sector. Here I would like to mention to my dear students that agriculture sector is also a backbone of the Indian economy. Without agriculture, we can't survive. We have to boost our agriculture sector, and the agriculture sector's participation in our GDP should also. And I believe this is the next IT sector of India. The software engineers enjoyed a lot during the last many years because of the IT sector development across the world. Now the time is for the agriculture sector. Agriculture sector should also participate and become the major driver of the economic growth of the countries going forward, because now newer and newer developments are taking place, and the world of post COVID-19 will be different from the current world. So I believe the agriculture sector will get its actual space, and the participation of agriculture in the GDP, in the employment creation, in terms of food processing, in terms of exports of the agri products will increase. Here I would like to mention that there are $1,300 billion imports, world food imports, but our participation is only $30-40 billion. We are less than 0.5% of the total food and agri imports. So this participation should also increase. If we are able to increase our exports of the agri and food items from the current rate of $30 billion to $50 billion in the next 2-3 years, or in the next 5 years, I think that will create a lot of employment opportunities for the growing rural young workforce. Because this is a IT sector for the rural young workforce. They will enjoy a lot of jobs in the food processing sector, which is also a strength of the Indian economy. And there is a lot of demand by the global economies in terms of their increased food imports. So then there was a stimulus package for the coal and mineral sector, defense sector. Now the defense sector is also becoming more and more vibrant, and the FDI in the defense sector has also been increased. So this will, I believe, also provide a great boost to the MSMEs, because in the defense manufacturing, there are a lot of MSMEs which are in the production process, and government time to time is also supporting these MSMEs with a lot of reforms and structural reforms to boost the efficiency and efficacy of the MSME sector. Then in the fifth tranche, there were reforms for the Manrega, increased number for the Manrega, then public expenditure on health, and minimum threshold to initiate insolvency proceedings. IBC code was also amended, and the limit was also, default limit was also increased from 1 lakh to 1 crore. So there were a lot of reforms for the ease of doing business and the IBC and for the regulatory environment. And along with the reforms provided by the government, RBI was also in a fast-moving trajectory. RBI also provided a lot of respite in terms of the repo rate. RBI reduced the repo rate significantly by 115 points. from 5.15% to 4%. So this is a great breakthrough in terms of the cost of capital, because industry is always in favor of reducing the cost of capital, because this is a major impact on the industry. They are not able to get funds at an adequate cost, because as compared with the global economies, as compared with the advanced economies or the emerging economies, our cost of funds is very, very high. So we have to reduce this cost by reducing the repo rate. But here, one thing is crucial for the trajectory of the small businesses, because banking sector is not percolating the whole effect of the RBI reduction in the repo rate. So at this juncture, we urge the banking sector, and we have written so many times to the banking sector, to the government banking secretary. To reduce, to motivate the banking sector to fully percolate the impact of the repo rate cut to the masses, to the people, to the industry, to the trade, so that they are benefited from the repo rate cut, and in terms of getting the adequate finance in terms of at the lower cost. So RBI, with the more and more regulatory reforms, they have now provided extension to so many deadlines. Also, they have provided moratorium in terms of EMIs. So considering all these developments by the Reserve Bank of India and government, we conducted a quick survey of the industry to know about the daunting impact of pandemic COVID-19 on trade and industry. And these findings were very, very interesting. And there are, I would like to share few findings of the survey, of which 61% of the respondents said maintaining price cost margin is a major challenge, because everybody was talking about the liquidity, but the major challenge at this juncture to the trade and industry is to maintain the price cost margins profitability, because their businesses are impacted and their cost is also increasing. So that's why they were not able to maintain their price cost margins, and going forward they are anticipating that their profitability will reduce. So this is a major challenge for them to maintain their profits. And 60% opined about the wages and salaries to the employees, 58% about the working capital requirements, then 53% stated repayment of the loans is a major issue, 52% were of the view that the cost of capital is very high, 51% said availability of finances and loans is problematic. Sometimes the microfinance level companies are not able to get the adequate finances from the banking sector because they demand the collaterals. So 51% cost of social distancing. So cost of social distancing is also now becoming challenging for the businesses, because they have to maintain the social distancing, and to maintain this social distancing they have to provide adequate space also, which is impacting their cost of businesses. So then weakening of demand is a major challenge, because they are producing, because now the lockdown is closed, and now we are in the unlock period, unlock 1. So this time demand has to come, because now the factories are working. So if the demand is not there, then the cost of their workforce, cost of their business operations will increase. That will impact their price cost margins. So then 50% were of the view that the compliances of labor laws are very, very tedious, and they are not able to comply with the labor laws. And 49% said retaining of the full workforce is also becoming a major challenge for them, because this is increasing their costs and impacting the profitability. So now considering their plans, how they are planning in the post-COVID arena, how they are planning in the unlock 1 period, how they are making their strategies to move forward. 67% respondents said increasing the sales volumes is a major plan one of the major plan that they are trying to increase the sales volumes, and 65% of point enhancing the competitiveness of businesses. They have to increase the competitiveness of their respective business enterprises, because now competitiveness will become a major um, ingredient to increase the sales volume. So because there will be a lot of competition in the market also. So cost cutting of the business operations, that is also in their strategic plans. Then 60% of point enhancing the business operations in the domestic market. Sometimes they are more connected with the global market, and and now the global markets are impacted. So now they are planning to expand their businesses in the domestic territory. And 58% stated focus on innovation, research and development. They will enhance their technologies and innovations, and they will try to become more and more competitive. Then price cost margin again is a major area of their plans. Then reducing the workforce in the business operations. They are cutting the costs and reducing the contractual workforce. 44% stated increasing the scale of business operations. Then diversification of the business operations. So 43% are in the spree for the diversification. They want to diversify from their ongoing businesses to the other businesses where they find some opportunity. So these were the plans of the businesses according to our quick survey, recent survey conducted by PSD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So now coming to how the global economy is working at this juncture, how the global economic developments are taking place. Now the global growth is projected at minus 5%, 5.2%, which is a great impact on the global economy, because earlier global growth was projected at 3%. The growth was projected at 3%. Now minus 5%. So the total effect is 8%. So if the global GDP is considered $90 trillion, then the impact will become at around $7 trillion. So this $7 trillion loss of the economic loss will be huge to impact the employment scenarios, to impact the growth trajectories of the emerging and developing economies. So how to mitigate this impact? Because as I mentioned in my earlier slides, that economies across the globe were decelerating. The growth numbers were decelerating, and India also decelerated from 7.2% to 4.2% in the last 3 years. Because trade war between China and US impacted a lot the global growth trajectory, and there was deceleration of the global GDP by 0.8% of the global GDP. That was $700 billion. So with this $700 billion, growth of the emerging and developing economies was significantly impacted. So now with $7 trillion, you can imagine the impact on the growth numbers of the emerging and developing economies. I believe the growth numbers will be in the significantly negative trajectories of the growth trajectories of the emerging and developing economies. So impact will be huge. So we have to find out the strategies to mitigate the impact, total impact. So markets were also impacted. This is the scenario of the financial markets. Spain's market was significantly impacted. There was impact of minus 39% impact was on this market of Spain. Then India 39%, Germany 38%. But there was a strong recovery also. You can see from the recovery from the low, India's market recovered at around 33% from its low of March. The market was decelerated to the level of 25,639 in the month of March in the Sensex. But Sensex recovered from this number to 34,000 109 in the first week of June, and this was a 33% recovery from the low of March. So almost all the economies, all the countries recovered from their lows of March, and India was also one of the most recovered markets. Though my belief is that the markets should again be very volatile, so there must be a cautious approach to invest in the markets, because a lot of news-based volatility is existing in the markets, because markets are not able to
Can you speak in English?
markets are confused. So this is increasing the volatility. Then global challenges, how the global challenges are impacting. Then curbed consumption and investment scenario because of the various impact of the COVID-19. Then cross-border spillovers, restricted labor supply and production, volatile financial markets, plunged equity markets, sharp decline in commodity prices, then risk of recession in majority of the countries with per capita output contracting, global trade to fall as anticipated by WTO. Global growth, global trade is also going to be impacted significantly, and there will be an impact of 13% to 31% on the global trade, which is huge. That will impact the export scenarios of the various economies. Then global policy priorities, how the global economies are going to mitigate the impact of daunting impact of the COVID-19. Global cooperation to cushion the COVID-19 consequences, protect vulnerable populations. So there are a lot of policy guidelines by the various international organizations like World Bank, IMF, and UNCTAD that economies, world economies across the emerging and developing economies should now come out with their strategies, and they must be very proactive to support their respective trade and industry scenarios and the people. And there must be social safety nets, and they must be expanded to protect them from this COVID-19 pandemic impact of COVID-19. And key economic and financial challenges in front of India. Now India is facing these major maintaining the and increase the GDP growth rate, because we are known for our growth trajectory, our GDP growth trajectory. We were the fastest moving economy in the world economic system, but now growth is decelerated and growth is impacted significantly. So we have to maintain this growth at least in the positive trajectory. So we should not be in the negative. So for the current year also, the government is in very serious mode to protect the GDP growth and to provide great relief to remain in the positive trajectory. And industry bodies like PSD Chamber of Commerce and Industry is also supporting the government and providing time to time so many measures to maintain the GDP growth number in the positive trajectory. Safeguard from the spillovers from contracting global growth. As I mentioned that there will be an impact of $7 trillion on the global economy. How to provide the safeguards from this to mitigate this daunting impact. So reduce fiscal deficit. Fiscal deficit will be very high because of the because there will be impact on the nominal GDP. So that's why the ratio of fiscal deficit automatically will become higher because of the contraction in the nominal GDP. So we have to mitigate this impact also. We have to maintain our fiscal deficit in a rational trajectory, though we can't maintain at around 3.7 or 3.8%. It will be more than 4.5%. So we have to become very cautious and very proactive to mitigate the impact and to become again in our FRBM targets. We have to maintain our GDP fiscal deficit at around 3%. So slowly in the coming times we have to reduce this number, which is now increasing more than 4%. So we have to become again very efficient to maintain at around 3.5% in the fiscal deficit scenario. So we have to increase demand also, boost the consumption level, reduce and prevent volatility of the financial markets. As I mentioned, that markets will remain volatile, and the currency stability is also one of the most important ingredients to maintain the macroeconomic stability. Then liquidity is also one of the most important ingredient of the businesses in terms of their working capital requirements. Then indigenous manufacturing. This is very, very important. This is an ingredient of the Atmanirbhar Bharat. So if we are increasing our indigenous manufacturing, then we have to focus more on the competitiveness of the economy. And dear students, here I would like to mention that during the last 5 years, there is a lot of improvement in these of doing business. We improved a lot from 144 to 63 during the last 5 years in ease of doing business. But this ease of doing business is not that much fruitful for the businesses. Economic growth is not in sync with the improvement in the ease of doing business. During the last 3-4 years, ease of doing business was increasing, but the economic growth was decelerating. So there is no correlation between the ease of doing business and the growth trajectory of the country. So how this will become fruitful? I believe there must be a reduction in the cost of doing business. Because if the ease of doing business is not supported by the cost of doing business, then this will not become fruitful for the businesses. So there are the major costs to the businesses. I would like to mention, because I am representing an prestigious industry body, PSD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So we have calculated the cost of doing businesses. And these are the 5 major costs to the businesses, which are: number 1, cost of power, cost of capital, cost of compliances, then cost of land, and the labor cost. These are the 5 major costs which are impacting the growth trajectory of the various businesses, because ease of doing business, a single window system is totally different from the cost of doing business. So if the cost of doing business is not reduced, then the ease of doing business will not become fruitful for the trade and industry. To create a level playing field, we have to reduce the business costs. Addressing the economic and financial challenges. So firstly, we have to increase the consumption. So that will come from the government side, because government has to increase its consumption level, particularly in the rural areas. If the consumption level in the rural areas is increased, I believe that will create a lot of demand for the people, and then a lot of demand for the trade and services, goods and services. So manufacturing sector will also be boosted with the increased consumption from the rural segments. So then we have to build up of the domestic capacities. We have to increase our production possibility frontiers for the enhancement of the indigenous production levels. If we really become to Atmanirbhar, then we have to produce more, and for the more and more production, we have to become competitive. And to become competitive, we have to reduce our cost of business. So there are a lot of suggestions by us to the government, and we have suggested that reduction in the repo rate must also become visible at the ground level. Then there must be increase in the working capital of the enterprises. Then recapitalization of the banking sector is also suggested. Then one-time restructuring of the loans is also suggested by PSD Chamber. Then provision of special relief package for the most affected sector, because government has not provided any relief to a particular sector. They have provided all the reforms, all the relief measures in common trajectory, common nature, but they have not provided a specific relief package for any industry which is impacted significantly by the daunting impact of COVID-19. These are the travel and tourism industry, hospitality, textile, automobiles, and entertainment industry. So focus must be on reducing the cost of business, which I already discussed. So these are the reforms, measures, relief measures provided by PSD Chamber to the government time to time, to Honorable Finance Ministers, to Honorable Prime Minister. So we have also suggested that there must be reduction in the corporate tax for the partnership firms, proprietary firms, because MSMEs, they have provided relief to the MSMEs, but of the total MSMEs, 95% of the companies are in the proprietary business. So these companies are not getting any benefit of the reduction in the corporate tax. So we have suggested that for all the MSMEs, whether in the proprietorship or the partnership or any kind of business, must be provided relief in the corporate tax. Then rationalization of GST. There are a lot of slabs in the GST, and we have suggested that 18% and 12% slab should be merged so that there are lesser number of the slabs and there should not be any impact on the revenue of the government. Then cut in the custom duties also, because the cost of raw material is increasing. Then measures to boost entrepreneurship in the country to increase job creation. Entrepreneurship, ease of doing business should also be increased. Then implementation of the infrastructure pipeline, allocations for the infrastructure pipeline should also be implemented. Then inclusive growth strategy for the longer run growth of the country to support the downtrodden, to support the poor segments of the society. And thank you very much, students. And these were the very crisp and pinpointed suggestions made by PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry to the Government of India for implementation. And now I would like to interact with you to address your questions. So,
thank you, sir. Thank you so much. It was really a very vivid presentations. In fact, I believe it's a well-researched presentation you made to all our students and participants. Thank you so much, sir. And the most interesting part was that the survey, the research survey which you have shown to us, that was really interesting. And you have almost covered all the sectors of the economy, including the domestic and global economic challenges post-COVID-19. It was wonderful listening to you, sir. And we have few questions, sir, from the participants. If you allow me, I'll read out these questions. You can answer them. So the first question asked by a student named Subham is asking, why don't we inculcate the importance of financial literacy to everyone? It would help the population immensely in the midst of crisis instead of making them degree seekers and salary reliant.
Sorry, I'm not able to hear you. Please, can you repeat once again?
The question is, why don't we inculcate the importance of financial literacy to everyone instead of making them degree seekers and salary reliant?
Yes, very good question, because this is very much needed and desired, because we are a vibrant economy,
right?
And we have every kind of segment in our economic system in our country. There are most rich people and poor people also. This is a great combination of the rich and poor, and every segment of the society. Like there are a lot of religions, a lot of castes, lot of races. So this is a very, very vibrant economy, vibrant country. दुर्लभ country है ये, दुर्लभ भारत है. तो इसके लिए जो suggestion है, that is to percolate the effect of macro level policies at the micro level. So we have to increase the literacy level at the ground level, literacy to the ground level. Here I would like to mention that most of the MSMEs, even most of the literate people, are not aware about the government policies. Once I was conducting a survey of the Government of India, of the CAG Office, Comptroller and Auditor General of India. There was a study on some reform by the government that was a relief provided by the government to the project financiers. They were getting some subvention of 3% in their project inputs. That was the scheme of the Government of India during the 1985. They provided this relief to the MSME sector. And we conducted a study in the year 2016. And we were shocked that 98% of the small businesses, MSMEs, were not aware about this scheme. only few enterprises, those who were aware about the scheme, were getting benefits.
Right.
So this is very good that we have to percolate the impact of the awareness of the government policies at the ground level. We have to literate the people at the ground level. There must be more and more programs, not only at the metropolitan cities, but also at the district level, at the tahsil level, at the village level, at the panchayat level, because finally the growth has to come from them now.
Absolutely.
The growth drivers will be the villagers, the rural people, and my dear students also. So the growth will now come from the young workforce and from the rural workforce.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. One more question from another student, Vidul. He's asking, financial package announced is not a direct relief or boosting economy package. What are your views on this? As many financial companies like Goldman Sachs and others have said, this package on ground level is just 1% of GDP instead of 10% of GDP. Please elaborate on this point.
Yes, they are very true. This is the total financial package. So, financial package doesn't warrant that this must be from the government outgo. So they provide various reliefs, various measures in terms of so many trajectories. Like sometimes they provide the relief in the interest rate scenarios. Sometimes they provide relief in the taxation system. Sometimes they provide a flow of credit. So all these measures are in a combination of all the relief measures, like interest rate subventions, relief in the taxes, relief in the getting credit from the banking sector by the MSME sector. So they are true that this financial package is at around 1% of GDP, because actual outgo from the government side is at around, I believe, 2 lakh crore. So if we are an economy of 212 lakh crore, then this 2 lakh crore becomes at around 1% of GDP, of nominal GDP.
Right.
So I believe and I agree with them that this is 1% of the GDP in actual terms. If we check the actual relief measure, if we check the actual outgo from the government, but overall benefit is in terms of interest rates, in terms of liquidity, in terms of finances to the MSME sector. So total becomes at around 20 lakh.
Right, right. Absolutely. Thank you, sir. One question from Dr. Surbhi Singh. She is a faculty of IMS Ghaziabad. She is asking, sir, how can we prevent the banks NPA, especially public sector banks, which shows larger NPAs? Now in COVID-19 scenario, the NPAs of banks may create many challenges.
Yes, very good question, because firstly, we have to recapitalize the banking sector. We have to strengthen the banking sector. And merger undertaken by the Honorable Finance Minister during the last few months is very, very significant, and it will provide a great relief, great respite to the banking sector. And going forward, how to mitigate the impact of NPAs on the banking sector, we have to be very, very proactive in disbursement of the loans. Sometimes, unfortunately, during the last many years, the focus of the disbursements was on the large enterprises. If you check, the NPAs are very, very low as compared with the large enterprises. The MSMEs NPAs are only 16-17% of the total NPAs. So my suggestion is, the suggestion from PhD chamber is that the banking sector should come forward to disburse more to the small businesses. They are more honest. They are more connected with their dignity. So they are not going to default without any reason. So the large enterprises, the majorly NPAs are created by the large enterprises. But the MSMEs are always in the problem to get finances from the banking sector. They are full of the problems. So our suggestion is diversify from the large enterprises to the small enterprises, to disburse more to the small business enterprises. That will reduce the content of NPA, and the banking sector will become more and more vibrant. And the credit disbursement will also become more visible, because the MSME sector is in thrust of getting finances from the government, from the banking sector.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I think we do not have any other questions, but there are a number of compliments for you, Sarma sir, for
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
such an informative session on this global financial crisis post COVID-19. So
I can answer. I can also answer through email if any question is there. So
right,
you
sir.
can email
Right,
me.
sir.
I
Right,
can
sir.
email me, so I will provide answers to all the questions.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Now, I
Thank you,
think it's over to Sai to formally propose a vote of thanks before we end this session. Yeah, over to you, Sai.
Thank you, sir. Thank you everyone for participating in this wonderful webinar. And thank you, Sharma sir, for giving us insight about India's widening economic landscape and letting us know about the components of Atmanirbhar Bharat. We've been hearing about Atmanirbhar Bharat, we did not know what it actually includes. So it was indeed a very informative session and eye-opening session. And I thank our director sir and Tapan sir as well for organizing such kind of sessions, so everybody's benefited out of it. A recorded version of this session will always be available on request. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Namaskar.
Thank you, sir. Namaskar, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just going to end this session. See you all next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.